recorded.
All right, looks like we're ready to go ahead and get started tonight. So I think the first thing we'll do is go ahead and get started with a roll call to make sure that I have everyone here. So I'll start with myself, Tim Stroshine. I'm here. Arya Steiger.
I'm here.
All right, great. Thank you, Arya. Lynn Nelson.
I'm here.
Well, Lynn was with us a second ago, so hopefully she'll be able to.
I did say I'm here. I'm sorry, I am here. Hi, Lynn. This is Deanna. I'm here as well.
Deanna McMillan.
Hi, Deanna. Did you get us both, Tim?
Okay. Yes, I have it. Steve Clevenger.
I'm here.
Great. Jim Beatty.
Hello, I'm here. You hear me?
And it looks like we also have, yes, I got you, Jim, thank you. It looks like we also have Shannon Stannis.
This is Shannon.
Hello. Yes, hi, Shannon. Okay, did I miss anyone? I think I got all of you. All right, I'm not hearing anyone say that they were missed, so we can go ahead and get started. The first item would be approval of the meeting minutes. So I would take a motion to approve the minutes from the September 8th meeting.
Second by Deanna.
This is by
Deanna?
Steve.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Yes, motion by Steve and a second by Deanna. Thank you both. And are there any questions or corrections about the minutes before we hold a vote? I'm going to go ahead and conduct a roll call vote for approval of the meeting minutes. Tim Stroshine, I approve. Lynn Nelson.
I approve.
Deanna McMillan.
Yes, I approve.
Okay, I think I heard Deanna there. Did I miss you, Deanna?
You got me. I approve. You got me, Tim.
Okay, we have Gene Croshan.
Gene approved.
All right, thank you, Gene. Steve Clevenger.
Approve.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Jim Beatty.
Jim Beatty approves.
Thank you, Jim. And Shannon
I'm getting a lag, but I approve.
Very good, thank you. Okay, so with that, the meeting minutes are approved, and we're going to go ahead and move on to our next agenda item, which is discussing the Metropolitan Transportation Plan project list. So this is something that we're in the process of developing currently. What you see on your screen is what we put together for the previous version of the plan, the 2045 transportation plan. And this is kind of just to give you an idea of what this effort might look like. It's completed. So what you have on your screen is some recommended highway projects. So this can be several different, etc. So this is kind of what we came up with, the 2045 plan for highway projects. But we also have several other types of projects that I'm going to kind of scroll through right now. This is a specific. And again, also intersection improvements, some kind of reconstruction of existing roads, et cetera, et cetera. So plan, the 2050 plan that we're working on right now. Okay, so that's those. We also have some projects from our partners at NDOT as well. And same kind of idea where, they give us project name, description, where it's located, and a cost estimate there. And we have a summary of project costs by jurisdiction. Now, this is not the only type of project that we consider, though these are just the highway projects. What I want to spend a little more time on tonight, so this is something that we've been working on with kind of some stakeholders to gather some feedback on. So what we have here are some examples of potential trail projects. So what this map shows is that there are several different trails that could be constructed. So if you look at all the blue lines on this map, so once all of these would be completed, you can see we would have a pretty extensive trail network that would allow people to get to a lot of different places along major roads using something that's safer and kind of a separated path. One thing is gathering some feedback, and one of the big issues that they brought up was the issue of crossing streets. So when you're on a trail and you come to an intersection, you safely cross that intersection. About especially turning vehicles would be a challenge since they aren't always looking. And obviously that's a big problem. Are very vulnerable. If they get hit by a car, that's something that's very high potential for at least an injury, if not worse. So, one thing that's very important in development of this is, how we sign, how we mark crossings, and what kind of traffic control we have. So there are some different types of treatments that you can include, including, paint would be one of them that is pretty helpful. So specific pavement markings that, denote more than just a crosswalk to kind of alert drivers that other users are going to be crossing at these intersections, as well as certain special types of signals with flashing lights or reflective beacons. There are several different ones that are approved that can be used. So these are some of the kind of the things that we talked about with the stakeholder group, as well as just kind of looking at getting into other trail systems. So these are, what this map is showing is just trails along major roads, which is great. But, you know, sometimes when people want to go biking, you know, maybe they want to go from their house and get on the major roads or use the trails along the major roads, but then end up, you know, maybe at trails at, let's say, the state park. So, you know, how do we get people from these trails to that system of trails that they can use for, you know, recreation and those sorts of things? We don't really want people to have to feel like, well, you know, if I want to ride my discussed in regards to the trails, as well as you know, a few locations where we might want to see trails added. But I'm not necessarily going to go over those specifically tonight, but yeah, that's some of the things we discussed. So similarly, looking at sidewalks. So we are working to get a more aggressive sidewalk policy in our document we call our Thoroughfare Plan. I think we've discussed that before at CPC meetings, but just to kind of give everyone a refresher, if you maybe weren't at those meetings, or the Thoroughfare Plan kind of says, you know, when new development comes in, if a new subdivision gets put in, or maybe a redevelopment, so, you know, even a commercial subdivision or residential subdivision, we want to make sure that not only are we getting sidewalks so that you can get from your house to your neighbor's house to go have dinner with them or whatever, but you can also get from your house, your residence, to perhaps a shopping center or whatever other destination you might want to have, or you might want to get to, restaurant perhaps. So yeah. So sorry, just going to pause here a second. I am kind of seeing that it looks like maybe we're having some technical audio issues. I'm going to go ahead and
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Deanna.
yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I had a question, but you were breaking up, so I didn't know if I was interrupting you or not.
Yeah, sorry, we've had some streaming issues tonight. So I'm not sure what can be done about that. So I did try to switch my device, so hopefully that helps. But other than that, I'm not sure what I can do. Okay, so why don't you just go ahead with your question now while we're
Okay. While
we're paused.
does the county have, can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, I
Does
can
the
hear you.
county have a list of contractors that are pre-qualified to do some of those specialty items for, you know, like culverts, sidewalks, handicap access, striping with, you know, approved colors, that kind of stuff? Is there a list of contractors already that are pre-qualified to do that work in the county, or would there be expense associated with identifying contracts that can do that kind of specialty work? I'm talking about the, you know, the curbs, the sidewalks, the handicap access, the, you know, the little bubble things that you put on there for traction for people with wheelchairs. You know what I mean? Some of those specialty items.
Yes. So the short answer is it depends on what the scope of the project is.
Mm-hmm.
So if that work is being completed as part of a larger project, then it would just be bid out. So it would be the responsibility of the contractor that won the bid
Mm-hmm.
to perform that work. But if it's kind of a smaller maintenance project, the local jurisdictions do have contracts, like pre-approved contractors that they can just call on to kind of do some of that work at different intersections throughout the city. So,
Mhm.
you know, maybe
Somebody
if they have
like
several
Hut or somebody like
intersections
that.
that they want to restripe.
Mhm.
Yeah, that
I'm
would
just, I'm
be
just,
an
I'm just
example,
trying
yes.
to get a grasp of, you know, what the local and regional impact would be of a project on a large magnitude. And I know, I guess it was maybe 5 years ago or so, there was an effort to put in curbs and handicap access on the sidewalks, and it seemed like every sidewalk in Lafayette was under construction or something like that. So there would be a big impact if we didn't have an idea of who could do the work and do it effectively. So I was just wondering if there was a pre-approved list of general contractors or subcontractors to do that work. So we'll just go out to a larger bid. Hello?
Well,
Okay, all right, I hear you.
it
Sorry.
depends on what kind of project it is. So,
Okay.
like, let's say, you know, some work done with some of the areas that you're talking about, then whoever wins that bid would be responsible for that work, as well as, you know, the road construction portion of the work. But let's say,
Okay.
just sticking with West Lafayette, that they would go ahead and, you know, West Lafayette would have several different intersections where they would need to redo the curb cuts. Then they might just hire, you know, one contractor and say, okay, you know, we need to get these 15 locations done. And, you know, we know that you've worked with us in the past, so we'll just sign a contract with you, and, you know, you can go through and get these done during the summer or whatever.
Okay, perfect. So there's that
So
kind of
that's
flexibility.
possible.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was asking. Thank you so much. That was my question.
Hey, Tim, I see your mic is still turning on and off here. One thing you could try, if you click on the gear in the upper right corner and go to meeting, and then on that settings panel, there's at the bottom right corner menu in blue. And if you click on that, it brings up a little options menu. And on the first page you see, there should be a little box that says advanced at the bottom. It says use automatic voice and noise processing. If you uncheck that, it might help.
Okay.
I can't hear you right now, Tim. Maybe it didn't help.
Okay. Can you hear me now, Aria? Or anyone?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yep, I can hear you too.
Okay. All right. I tried to move where I sit in the office. I'm wondering if maybe there's just some interference in that part of the building for some reason. So maybe this spot will be a little bit better. Fingers crossed. Okay. So yeah, with the sidewalks, we are looking at some of what Deanna talked about, with trying to make sure that they are more accessible to all users. So as part of that, we undertook a project this fall where we went down to Dayton and did what we call a sidewalk inventory, where we looked at all the sidewalks and said, okay, what sort of condition is the surface in? Are there maybe any trip hazards, like is the sidewalk heaving from some roots pushing it up and kind of making it so that someone in a wheelchair couldn't pass that portion of the sidewalk, or maybe there's spots where the surface of the sidewalk is pretty narrow, or spots where the surface has worn away, or perhaps there is a manhole or utility cover impeding to the sidewalk. So just kind of looking for those sorts of issues. And we are planning on continuing that with some of the other small towns in Tippecanoe County. And for the two cities, for Lafayette and West Lafayette, the city engineering departments are kind of working on their own efforts towards that. So we as the area plan commission aren't doing that. But we're kind of trying to, make sure that by doing the small towns, that we are working throughout the whole community so that all the different parts of the community can have that connectivity and be able to get around safely without, worrying about having sections of sidewalk where, they might have to go out into the street to navigate a certain section, or, do something where they wouldn't feel safe. So similarly for bike facilities, so what we're looking at is, well, maybe there's some areas where we can put in some bike lanes. So again, we do have some potential, bike lanes marked out here. This map there is kind of a reddish color. Well, if we go ahead and take a look at these bicycle facilities, is that going to help in some of these areas? Is that going to make cyclists feel safer? What do we have to do to protect them? And you have some value, but a lot of times cyclists don't necessarily feel quite as safe when they're in the bicycle lane. Just having basically some paint doesn't necessarily make you feel safe. So some of the other solutions, like the separated trails and such that we have, probably do tend to make cyclists feel safer. We would prioritize them. So if there are places where bicycle lanes can maybe help a little bit, and then we can still get costs that it takes to put those in, then maybe that still has some value. So that's kind of what we're looking at with this. And you'll notice they are mostly in the cities, especially the older downtown area, where it's a little bit harder to kind of get trails and those sorts of things, bike lanes concentrated in those areas.
Hey, Tim,
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
a question. I have noticed a lot. It's originally built as, 4-lane reconstruction. Wimberg and Klondike are examples of those to it, but they end up building it as, 1 lane in each direction plus a lot more really wide suicide lane, but then they're able to put in the bike lanes on either side, at the edge of the road, along with the trail. And my question is why do you just add a foot on each, or a foot or two, or a foot and a half on each side to accommodate bicycle lanes, rather than making it so that at the same time when the need arises?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the short answer is the reason why they do that is it's a cost thing. So, you know, if you don't necessarily put it more economically initially, but that does lead us to the long-term problem to really get everything we want to get in the right of way in there. And, you know, in those cases, just having a trail as opposed to, you know, a trail and a bike lane. But sometimes, you know, the road gets small advantage is that it does allow you to have a bike lane initially, and then, you know, once the trail comes in and another lane can be added, then you can have, you know, 2 travel lanes each direction, so a 4-lane, as well as a trail, which by that
Those are like the new Limburg Road that just opened, was originally built as a, you know, was originally proposed as a 4-lane road. It's not necessarily needed as a 4-lane road right now, but as you know, over the years, as you get growth, that trail that went in at the same time, you know, why not plan for just a little bit more so that you can, you know, still have a bike lane, because a lot of commuters like using the bike.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point.
In order to add bike lanes to it, if it ever needs to be converted to 4 lanes, you need to then widen you need to dig up and redo all the gutters and sewers, you know, storm sewers, in order to do that. So you're talking about a major reconstruction again. When you've got the width for a 4-lane road, it seems like it's a minor expense just to add a little bit more pavement.
Yeah, I do see your point. So I will say that that's something that tends to be a decision that's made by the city engineers or local government engineers, depending on, you know, if it's in the county or not, and their consultants. So I guess I'm kind of handing it off a little bit, but that level of decision making, and, you know, with funding the way it is, that's a big challenge. So sure, that's probably not a very satisfactory answer, but it's the best answer I can give you, Steve.
You know, the contrast, you know, I'm on the west side. So in contrast, you know, look at the Cumberland extension, which is at Klondike, where Limburg Road, for instance, you know, ends up going, you know, hitting Jackson Highway and 26. You would think that that would be a better option for a 4-lane road than for, you know, Cumberland. You know, Cumberland does have the trail, but it doesn't have bike lanes. And then there's also no plans, for instance, into Sherwood, I guess it's Wake Robin. You've got a lot of people, especially during the Limburg reconstruction, but you still have a lot of people making left-hand turns out of the, you know, the passing lane. And why they can't make it just a, you know, think ahead and accommodate for some of the, you know, possibly a left turn lane there, so that you don't have people. There's a lot of planning that when they design these that needs to be thought through a little bit more.
Yep, that's a very fair point. Are there any other questions from people regarding trails, sidewalks, bike lanes, or are we ready to kind of move on a little bit to the next topic? Okay, I will interpret that as there are no further questions on this. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next item, which is talking about transit facilities. So this one we don't necessarily have a map for. Partner up with City Bus and see what we can do about making the bus stops a little bit more consistent in terms of what amenities they have. So, you know, for anyone who uses the bus system or knows people that use the bus system, what is available for people at different stops varies widely from stop to stop. You know, you have some stops where there's a shelter with, you know, a bench and maybe, you know, some nice dynamic message signs about when certain routes might arrive, you know, what their estimated time is for those vehicles to come in, that sort of thing. And you have others that are kind of on the other end of the spectrum where it's basically just a sign and you're kind of in maybe a ditch or along the shoulder of a road and there's no real amenity. So we are kind of trying to look at how we can fund those is one of the first things that we're working on, is what funding might be available to help out with that. City Bus has gone through and taken an inventory of their bus stops, and they have identified some of the locations, you know, where they might want to add some amenities. So there are plans to go ahead and construct several new shelters or at least benches at some of the different bus stops. And that's kind of a short-term plan, but long-term, we're looking at how we can make this more consistent so that when we do have these facilities, you know, how can we make sure that shelters are maintained at stops and people have a safe place to wait, especially during inclement weather. So that is something that is ongoing and that we're looking at. I don't necessarily have a graphic for that. It's a little bit different because we're kind of working directly with City Bus on that. And it's more of a kind of a philosophical thing as opposed to a long-range planning thing. And we're kind of trying to figure out again how we can fund it. But I just wanted to make you guys aware that we have not forgotten transit. And then another thing that some of you, of course, may have heard about is the infrastructure bill, some of the items that are available in that. You know, if you've followed the news about that, you may have heard that, you know, there's a lot of funding for trains, for example, and funding for electric vehicle charging and those sorts of things. And because some of that is kind of new funding, we're not sure exactly how it's going to, you know, who's going to be managing it, so to speak, whether it's going to be the State Department of Transportation or if they're going to have that managed at the local level. You know, we're not 100% sure how we're going to use those funds, or if we're even going to get a chance to have a say in how those funds are used. But it is something that we're monitoring. And, you know, we're certainly hopeful that at the very least we can have a chance to give some input as to what areas, you know, some of those items might be effective in. So that's kind of another thing that we're considering long-term with this plan. And this plan, just to let you know, the 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan is going to be adopted in June of 2022. And so we're not even sure if we will have guidance from the federal government about some of the new funding by then. So that might have to be something that's amended into that later, into the plan later, once we get some more information. But it is something that we're watching, and I don't necessarily have anything we can show you about that, since, like I said, it's still pretty new. Congress took a little bit of time to get that all sorted out. So, you know, it kind of takes a while then to get things sorted from the federal highway down to the State Department of Transportation down to us at the local level. So not quite sure when we're going to get some guidance about that, but we are watching for it. All right, so that's what I had in regards to this. Are there any further questions anyone had about this?
Just to say, I haven't seen any comments from the web. So,
Okay, thank you for monitoring that, Aria. Okay, well, with that, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda, which is, well, actually, sorry, before we do that, one more thing. So if you are interested in giving us some more kind of specific comments about some of these things, and would like those comments included in the plan, so that there can be a record that, you know, something that you were interested in, I would encourage you to email us at apc@tippecanoe.in.gov, and then we can set up whatever would be a convenient method for you to get in touch with us. We do have some specific stakeholder groups that are meeting regarding some of these topics. I can get you a link to those meetings. They're also virtual meetings, if that would be convenient for your schedule. And if it, you know, the meeting times don't match with when you're available, we can work out something else. You know, I can take written comments from you. I can meet with you individually. If that's what you prefer, we can figure something out. But I just want to make sure that, you know, everyone knows that there is a chance to have your voice. And like I said, I think the easiest way to get that done is to email apc@tippecanoe.in.gov, and then just in the subject line, and that'll let everyone know that it's supposed to go to me. And then I will get in touch with you from there.
Tim, this is Deanna.
Yeah, go ahead, Deanna.
Yeah, this is a big ask, but is there organizations? I don't know what organizations, churches, I don't know, Girl Scouts, I don't know. But other organizations can know that this plan is available and that comments, you know, because I suspect, sorry about that, I suspect that there are people who ride bikes and there are people who, you know, whose kids are driving around these new circles and these new patterns that would like to have some information or some input. Is there any way to kind of seek out public input? I know it sounds like a big deal, but I think it'd be much appreciated.
Yeah, it's a very good question. So we have done a couple other things to seek out public input. One of those that we've put together some surveys that we had online. We distributed those through our social media accounts. So we did that, and we did get some good comments from that. We kind of had specific questions in those surveys that focused on some of these same areas. So we did have specific questions about, you know, areas where trails might be, areas where sidewalks were in disrepair, as well as some of the highway stuff too, you know, dangerous intersections, locations where people felt like they didn't really want to drive, or maybe places they would try to avoid when they were driving, those sorts of things. Places where they might like transit stops, that was another question we asked. So we had a couple of surveys that we sent around that we got some good feedback from on those. We got some good comments, which will also be included in the plan.
Yeah, I would just think with this kind of major undertaking, since all of the details aren't apparent, and you know, I think there'd be some other questions that may be more specific and direct than even what we would comment. I think if maybe I don't know, it may be open in can of worms, but I would think that this would be a good time to make some kind of inquiry where there could be a broader input.
Yeah, so one thing that is a little bit tricky about that is, you know, because of the pandemic, we as a government organization can't necessarily go out into the public like we would normally like to.
I'm talking about on the social media. I'm not talking about physically going anywhere. I'm just saying provide an opportunity for feedback to our larger group, not go out in the street and hand out flyers and talk to people. I'm just saying maybe the survey on the Facebook page or social media or to the, I don't know, Greater Lafayette Commerce or something, where there's a group of organizations that you have access to that can provide an input or at least say that they had the opportunity to input.
Yeah. Okay. That is a good point. Yes. I mean, when we were doing the surveys, we did reach out to a lot of organizations and had them share it on their social media pages as well. So it wasn't just on ours. You know,
Awesome.
but unfortunately, again, what I, just to be transparent, what I would have loved to have been able to do is, you know, go out to, you know, events where we could have like community events, we could have like a table or something. You know, if the public health situation had been different, we could have done that. You know, we would have tried to make it to a few events or festivals. So hopefully by the time we do this for the 2055 plan, which will be in 5 years, things will be cleared up and we can do it that way. And then still keep the online comment method as well, because we know that that's something that people like to do nowadays. You know, a lot of people find it very convenient to be able to, you know, just get on their phone and fill out a survey. So, but yeah, so we did make an attempt. Yeah.
Tim, didn't we reach out on Nextdoor and Twitter as well?
Yes. Yeah. So we use different social media platforms. So it's Facebook, Nextdoor, and Twitter. And then we did have other community organizations post the same link to the survey on their social media platforms as well.
Yeah, something that would be no contact, but would reach a wide group of people is what I was getting at. So thanks for considering it. I don't know what can be done regarding this plan, but I would think that it would be well received to have some access to comment. So thanks for considering it, and I'd appreciate you giving it some further consideration for the future.
Okay. Yeah, we do plan to have a couple more opportunities for people to comment on other aspects of the plan as well. And we'll use some of the same methods where we'll send out surveys and try to get it on as many different places as possible, so that people can see, you know, hopefully see it and you know, realize what it is.
Great.
That's kind of one of the big challenges, I think, with this is just getting people to realize, you know, what you're really asking for. Because sometimes, you know, you'll be on whatever social media platform and you'll see some link to a survey and, you know, you just won't think twice about it because you think, oh, that's whatever, that's not something that applies to me. But, you know, trying to get someone's attention and realize, you know, hey, this is something that I really do want your feedback on, and here's what it is not easy to do. That's where in-person contact would be very valuable, but again, not possible because of the public health situation.
Yep, I got that. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you for the suggestion. That's a very good point. Okay, are there any other questions, comments, or suggestions?
Are these slides available online?
So this is what I'm showing is everything is in the 2050 MTP, or sorry, 2045 MTP.
2045, not 2050.
Right. Yeah.
You're just looking at the 2045 to plan for the 2050, so you don't actually have any changes yet noted for the 2050 from the 2045.
Right. 2050 changes are a work in progress. We don't have anything finalized. And I don't really want to put out interim stuff.
Right.
Well, that's always a problem. Yeah. And another thing is we do also need about some of their projects, and also they like to double check the financial estimates that we put in there. So that's going to need to get done before we can distribute it so that we have their blessing.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Okay.
Got nothing for the web.
You said you didn't see any comments, sorry?
That's correct.
Okay. So I think we've probably left enough time for that, but we'll go ahead and move on to our last item, which is adjournment. But before that, I do want to mention the meeting dates for 2022. So we will continue to meet quarterly. So we'll meet in March on March 9th, June on June 8th, in September on September 14th, and in December on December 14th. So we will, one thing we're going to do is when we send out the packet for these meetings, so the email distribution list, we're going to include an calendar invite, so that hopefully people can get this on their calendars. This will hopefully make it a little bit easier to lives, and they aren't always thinking about putting things on their calendar when they get an email from us. So we're going to try to tweak that a little bit to make it hopefully a little easier to get things on people's calendars. So unless there are any objections, we will adjourn. So I'll leave just a little bit of time for anyone to make any last minute comments that I missed.
Yeah, I'll be watching on the web here, and I just wanted to mention as well, our team is virtually as well.
Yay.
The agendas. And I think for the public as well, we still do have the Tippecanoe room here at the county office building. There's no limits on people participating in person currently. There's no, public health orders or anything right now. So if people do want to show up in person, we do have chairs here. So, but I think for all y'all, this is going to be virtual. Yeah.
It's awesome because right now I'm in Georgia